Thousand Autumns, is a Meng Xi Shi novel. This is an audiobook made by fans for other fans. Disclaimer. The main couple of the story is made up of two men. If you don't like it, don't listen. Thank you. Remember, subscribe and click the bell to stay updated on all the new releases. Enjoy. Chapter 125. A moment's distraction, attention diverted by the other's question, the two of them maintained this interesting position. No one would remind Shen Qiao, the small deer wouldn't, Yan Wushi also wouldn't. And Yan Zongju's expression was plaintively serious. Most of the time his mouth carried a smirk, whether a smile not smile, or an arrogant laugh. It gave the impression that he was recklessly casual, but now, there was no trace of a smile on his face, becoming this imperceptible force that stopped people in their tracks, pausing whatever they were thinking to fully listen to what he was about to say. Only to hear Yan Wushi say, Huanyu sect's disciple selection seeks quality and not quantity, so under my tutelage I still only have Bian Yan Mi and Yu Shenjun, these two. When it comes to martial caliber, Bian Yan Mi is not the pinnacle, can only be considered above average, his smarts are elsewhere. Shen Qiao agreed with this statement. Bian Yan Mi's interpersonal and political skills were far from average. These years the deep roots that Huanyu sect had established in court, even after Yuan Yun's intended death blows, were able to rapidly reflourish in the new dynasty. This would have been impossible without Bian Yan Mi's efforts. Yan Wushi might have his capability, but likely not his patience. As for Yu Shenjun, he is naturally gifted in martial arts, but he's still too young. If I die, the two of them will be rather powerless and alone. When the time comes I'll need you to help look after them. If I die. Shen Qiao froze. Hearing this, in his heart surged an unprecedented, indescribable feeling. Outside the Tuyuhun capital, Yan Wushi ambushed by 5 grandmasters. When Shen Qiao had rushed over he had already been lying on the ground, unconscious. That time Shen Qiao also believed he had died, but that time Shen Qiao had sighed, but it was out of unresolved debts and grievances, out of pity for the death of body and soul of a grandmaster of a generation, and not like now, where numerous unknown sentiments threatened to overwhelm him. Are you grieving for me? Yan Wushi saw his expression, and burst out laughing. Shen Qiao collected himself. You said the flaw in your demonic core was fixed. This fight with Hulagu, you can go into it fully. Yan Wushi smiled. That's right, but there are exceptions to all things. Never mind that the opponent is Hulagu himself. Or based on your understanding of me, are you hoping that I arrogantly state that I am certain to win? Shen Qiao also smiled. If Yan Zongju said something along those lines, I wouldn't be surprised in the least. He finally felt something was off about their position, extended a hand to push the other away, trying to get up. But Yan Wushi didn't move. Not only did he not move, he kept him pinned down. His position was quite technical, immobilizing the other completely, without letting Shen Qiao feel any discomfort. Shen Qiao thought he was still waiting for his answer, so said, I understand Yan Zongju's will. I will do my best to protect them. If Huanyu sect has trouble, as long as they're not doing anything against the logic of the heavens, I will also do my best to defend them. In the Jianghu, a promise was worth 1,000 gold. With Shen Qiao's character, this promise was worth even more than 1,000 gold. Unless he died, this promise would hold in face of all thunder and storms. He remembered Yan Wushi's entrust things to after I'm gone, suddenly felt it was extremely laughable and lamentable. Bian Yan Mi and Yu Shenjun, those two, how would they overlap in any way with the words powerless or alone? Even if they were left to the Jianghu, they would only bully the vast majority, and not the other way around. After his response, Yan Wushi still hadn't moved. With a sincerity and softness that Shen Qiao had never heard before, he asked, Qiao, you treat me so well, how can I repay you? Shen Qiao, to treat friends sincerely, why seek a return? Yan Wushi, as if not hearing his words, continued, what others dream of in gold, gems, fame, fortune, it's all worthless in your eyes. Shen Qiao corrected him, that's not right, I also like fame and fortune. Yan Wushi, what? Shen Qiao, Xuan Han couldn't remain separate from the world, and for me to protect Xuan Han, I also can't remain separate from the world. In the Jianghu, potential is the most powerful backing, but Xuan Han is also a Daoist sect. A Daoist sect cannot be separate from the dynasty. Before you were able to connect me with Yangjian, let Xuan Han stake a foothold in Chang'an, I'm very grateful to you. Yan Wushi, a small smile, this person understands everything. Shen Qiao, so fame and fortune is useful, but one needs to be aware not to get entangled. Everyone knew this principle, it was easy to say but hard to do. Uai, Tan Yuan Chun likely also thought this way, but who would be able to persist until the end? Yan Wushi, softly, that's why you're special, these things to you, truly exist outside of the self. I gave it some thought, and was unable to think of anything that could truly repay you. I can only give you myself as repayment, what do you think? No. Shen Qiao gaped, seeing him about to lower his head, he no longer hesitated and aimed a palm strike at his chest. Yan Wushi made to grab his wrist, but then he couldn't maintain his center of gravity, was forced to move a little to one side. Shen Qiao's other hand sliced towards his other shoulder, in an instant the two of them had exchanged multiple moves. Shen Qiao took the opportunity to strike back, pinned him under his body instead. Yan Wushi, amazed, so you like this position, you should have said earlier. That expression, innocent however you look at it. By Shendaozang's life experience, even if he didn't know what exactly the other was alluding to, could still understand the ambiguity in those words. Now he really believed the other's demonic core was fixed, otherwise with the fight looming, how could he still have the time to tease others? Shen Qiao made to seal his meridian points, Yan Wushi wouldn't let him succeed, arms flying, a blink of the eye and multiple moves were exchanged again, every move was a flawless knife point. The two of them were both highly ranked martial masters, Shen Qiao might be a notch behind, but the difference wouldn't be that significant. At this point Yan Wushi simply gave up, opened himself up to the other's palm strike. As expected, Shen Qiao paused, and couldn't do it, instead Yan Wushi took the opportunity to pin him under his body again. The beauty in his embrace, it would be hard to find a second under the heavens, but his most moving attribute wasn't his appearance. Everyone that had crossed paths with him knew, this person had a heart like the sea in which all rivers run into, steadfast in storms and setbacks, and yet he would never displace his suffering onto others. On any day, he could be the most kind and closest friend, in a crisis, he could be the most trustworthy life and death companion. Shen Qiao wasn't wrong, in Yan Wushi's eyes previously, aside from disciples, there were only two categories of people, one was opponents, the other ants, but now, Shen Qiao's weight in his heart clearly didn't belong to either category, more than that, and even heavier, more heavy than even Bian Yan Mi I could imagine. This intention, whenever it had begun wasn't important, the important thing was that Shen Qiao in their interactions had slowly let his guard down, and was willing to treat him like a friend again, willing to make such a large promise for him, but this wasn't enough. For Yan Wushi, this was far, far from enough. What he wanted was a particularity that only occurred once in heaven and hell, a position that someone else couldn't casually imitate or steal away. He had always been domineering. What he wanted had to be the best, that no one could replace. Yan Wushi had not overtly demonstrated this intention, never mind forcing a bow against its curve. Compared to his previous methods, this would be considered gentle. All of it was because he understood Shen Qiao too well. This person seemed acquiescent. In truth, he had a peerless backbone. Any method that crossed a line might lead to them walking away, distancing him farther and farther. Look at UAI. It couldn't be a better lesson of a previous cart crash. So Yan Wushi changed his usual methods. Incrementally he drew the other towards his trap, not intense at all. He hadn't even sealed the other's meridians when they exchanged moves. If he had sealed the other's meridians, he could force the other into a position of passivity, forced to listen, but what was the point of that? No point at all. Shen Qiao succumbed to softness and not to harsh measures, Yan Wushi using this opportunity to regain the upper hand. It was not totally unexpected. You don't want anything, I can only deliver myself to you, isn't that enough? From their position, Yan Wushi should be looking down, a sense of superiority, but Shen Qiao could sense behind his grin that he was holding back, found it enraging and funny. Do you still remember, back then, what happened in the cave? He slowly lowered his head, the tone of his voice light and warm. What happened in the cave? Shen Qiao remembered two instances. One was after Yan Wushi and Ruyan Ky fought. Shen Qiao thought he had been injured, pursued him into the caves to see if he was okay. The result was nearly being choked to death. The other was when the other had used his Shen Hetongbei to scale fish. His thoughts stopped there. Shen Qiao's expression darkened. I implore Yan Zongju to let go. I'm not used to talking to people like this. There's no one else here anyway. Yan Wushi laughed, pulled him up into his arms, half pressed to the wall. In this way Shen Qiao went from a lying down position to a sitting position, but he was still half trapped in the other's embrace. The other had not sealed his meridians, the point being if he wanted to break away, he'd have to move against Yan Wushi. If he struck out lightly, the other could nullify it effortlessly. If he struck out forcefully, the other would just give up, a plaintive do as you will. Then Shen Qiao couldn't. This was totally. A dead pig doesn't fear boiling water. Yan Wushi, I'm about to meet my death, and you don't even have the patience to listen to me say a few words. Shen Qiao sighed, gave up struggling. Speak. Yan Wushi smiled, but I thought about it just now, and instead of speaking, I should just act. Topic to topic, Shen Qiao could not keep up with this train of thought. Blankly, ah. And then he couldn't say any more. His voice was cut off abruptly, his vision obstructed by a shadow. On his lips there was heat and softness. The other pried open his teeth, advanced ruthlessly. From the side there was a brief yelp. Yu Shenjun was at the doorway. The deer had bitten his robe from behind. He had been intending to step back, and had nearly tripped over the deer. Shen Qiao struck out a palm towards Yan Wushi's shoulder, straightened his torso, standing up, breaking away. But his lips were a bit swollen, his hair a bit messy, his expression very unnatural, embarrassed and annoyed, uncertain if he was more embarrassed or more annoyed, but looking like this, he couldn't even start to maintain composure. Yu Shenjun saw his Shizun begin to look his way, would rather have dashed his head open on a pillar. With his Wuzhong, he wouldn't have made this kind of mistake, the fault lay with his timing. He had puttered around the whole residence, thought that the two of them would have finished their discussion by now, so he could go greet Shizun, who knew he'd arrive right on time for this see no evil. Truly unfortunate. Yu Shenjun laughed dryly, that, can you pretend I was never here? He had no more courage to greet his Shifu, turned around and vanished, running far away as he could. De Shixian, is it too late for me to go stay with you in Chang'an? End of the chapter. Stay tuned for more BL.